Hey, it's Keith from Outlaw Speed Shop, and welcome to this month's Four Horsemen build. This is December. The theme is Rat Rod, and the casting is this 32 Ford 3-window coupe, and we're going to all see what we can do with it. As always, if you like what you see, make sure you subscribe, and don't forget to ring the bell to get notified of all future videos. And if you want to participate, here is a list. Come back to this point of the video. These are all the themes and the cars. So yeah, we're going to start with this 32 Ford. We all get the same casting. And obviously the first step is I usually grab a handful of bits. It's always different as to what size I use, but I'll start off with a little bit smaller, just to be on the safe side, just to kind of get it going. Sometimes it works. Sometimes I have to step it up one size. And then pretty much once you break the tab off, you can just pry it apart, and it comes apart fairly easily. Don't pry too hard. If it's not coming off, then drill a little bit more. It's got the crappy bronze chassis, interior. The snorkel I'm going to cut off and take the wheels off, because obviously I am not going to keep the original Hot Wheels wheels. I'm going to use, I kind of went back and forth on what I was going to do with wheels on this, and I end up kind of changing them towards the end to not these, but they're essentially the same size. So for spacing and for stance and everything else, this is fine. What I did is I cut some piano wire, and I'm using that as my axles for mock-up. That way I can, they're extra long, so I don't have to worry about it. I can kind of fit everything that way. So you kind of see what I'm after. I'm not really going crazy on this. There's different ways. I used to build hot rods, and I started doing that back when rat rods started becoming a thing, and they weren't called rat rods. They were just budget hot rods. There's different ways you can go. I mean, nowadays they're all really extreme, chopped and channeled and sectioned. Huge. A lot of them have huge motors. If you notice what happened there, the center of my cutting disc blew out. So that's why you always wear eye protection, and you should just wear protection in general. But rat rods it was all up to the discretion, but ultimately they're supposed to be a budget car, something that you would have, dug out of the graveyard, you could say, and just kind of brought back. You didn't go crazy on stuff, and you try to make it semi-period correct. And what I'm doing here is I get this Hillborn injection unit off the bone shaker that I'd cut off with something else. I cut one stack off because there's 8, so I made it 6. So it has 6 Stromberg carburetors, let's call it that. And after stripping the paint, I'm using a wire wheel just to kind of get the residue from what I didn't wash off in the hot water from the citrus strip. And I'll go around and get inside all the little nooks and crannies and cracks and crevices just to make sure, because if you don't get the if you don't get the citrus strip or any dirt or grime out of those, maybe the hood lines, or in this case, the rumble seat lines or the door lines, the paint won't stick, and it'll just give yourself nightmares. So your best bet's just to spend the extra few seconds and clean it with a wire wheel. Just makes things a little bit easier. And if you got to pick, if there's something stubborn, you can get in there with a pick as well and kind of pick the lines. I take it the extra step. I use a piece of Scotch-Brite. It's optional. You don't have to. I just get into a routine, and I kind of do the same thing every time, and it works. So, if it's working, why screw with it? But again, rat rods are a discretionary thing. They're supposed to be a budget. What you would be able to do with very little money. And that's kind of where I'm going with this. Obviously, the firewall where I cut off that snorkel, just trying to smooth that out a little bit. I'm going to end up putting some glazing putty in there as well, just to smooth it out a little bit more. Not trying to be perfect. Again, it's supposed to be like a budget build. And, when we were doing it, we would take, we had, especially being in New England, we get some pretty crap cars, and, half the cars are gone. So if we're sectioning a car, it's usually because we have to, because half the car is gone, um, or channeling it over the frame because the bottom part of the car is all gone. But, you want to, ultimately, it was just what you worked with what you had. And, back when people were building budget rods back in the 50s and the 60s, you went with what was available. You may have a 32 Ford that was your dad's, but, we've done it where we put DeSoto Hemis in them, swapping different motors and different, manufacturers. You would section, do crazy crap with the frame to be able to drop stuff down. You chop the top. You never finish the paint. You just drive it. And that's kind of the fun of the whole rat rod movement. And I hate calling it rat rod because it's almost like an insult, but it's kind of become mainstream. But, in this particular build, I'm just going very basic. Something that was a rusty car, or pretty much semi, you can see a different, I'm just talking over the stuff that I'm doing. So if you're not paying attention to the video and just listening to me, you're screwed. I got my rust stuff here. I'm just trying different avenues of trying different things. This is an airbrush kit, but I use it a lot like a wash because they are pretty thin, and there's quite a few to choose from as far as shades of rust and brown. So that's kind of why I've done this in a couple of videos. And it's a discretionary thing. You kind of just keep doing crap until it looks good. I can't sit here and say use X amount of this and this. It just, whatever works. So what I'm trying to do here is go with, a classic small block motor with a injection unit and a rusty frame. But then I'm going to end up putting some semi-cool tires and rims on it, and just kind of going with that appearance and that look. And here I'm just kind of, you can see where I'm kind of dabbing, and that's what I'm going to do for a good percentages, is just dab. I'm not going crazy. I'm not, a lot of times you'll see me use the Typhus Corrosion and Rise of Rust. Here I'm just trying to experiment. I use the Four Horseman builds to experiment with stuff because I honestly, it's not a competition. If it comes out good, it comes out good. If it doesn't, it looks like all the rest of my crappy videos. So I really don't care. I do it more just to push myself to try different things. And, if I keep doing the same crap all the time, then I'm not going to learn anything. And each time I build a car, I do learn something. So here, like I said, I'm just using an old scraggly brush just to kind of dab. And this is just one color. I'm going to do a bunch of different colors of that shades of that kit, just to kind of add a little bit of texture or the appearance of texture. And, rust it's not all monocolor. There's different shades of rust depending upon what degree of rust. And I'm kind of basing mine off of New England rust, meaning the spots that normally would rust out on a 32. And unfortunately, I have experience with that. And, it's just one of those things that, fortunately, this car was already chopped, so I didn't have to chop it, which is good. And chopping a 32 really isn't all that bad considering, but it's still a pain in the ass. So, but here you can see I'm kind of just smattering it here and there, and then I'll clean the brush, and then I can just go to the next color, and then I'll go to the next color after that, and kind of play around with different shades in different places. And I'll also use like a brown wash from Citadel, which is an Agrath Earthshade, which is a brown tint. I'll use that on all the seam lines just to add a little bit more staining. And if you thin this stuff out too, the airbrush colors I'm using right now, you can thin it out with water to give it a little bit more of a, if you're trying to get like a streak effect, I guess you could say, off of if a rusty handle has been sitting out in the weather and the rust drips down the side of the body, you can get that same effect by watering this down a little bit, and it just kind of dilutes it just enough where it makes it very easy to work with your brush to get it to do whatever it is you want it to do within reason. So another little tip for you. I don't know if you understand exactly what I mean, but I tend to babble anyway. So this is actually a long video. I think it's like 19 minutes, which is usually about 5 minutes past. I go by my attention span, which is about 10 minutes. My videos are usually 12. But based on my YouTube stats, nobody watches it for 12 minutes anyway. So they usually go 3 minutes in and then they jump to the end. So I'm obviously losing people by talking, but whatever. It's my channel. I'm going to do what I want. But yeah, you can see here, I'm just kind of, I'm experimenting, even though it looks like I kind of know what I'm doing. I'm not. I'm just trying different things. And this lighter shade, which I want to say it's more on the yellow side, although it looks orange on camera, which is good because that's technically how it dries, especially when you put it on top of the darker brown rust. And it works out really well, I think. But here you can see I'm kind of hitting the body lines. This is technically the last video for 2020. Thank God this year is over. I hope you all are staying safe. And if you own a small business, I feel for you. Unless you're doing really well, then I'm happy for you. But being a small business owner myself, I get it. And I know the struggle is real, and I feel for you. So if you don't own a small business, make sure you support one, because they're your friends, they're your neighbors, and they depend on you. Sometimes you take it for granted and just like, oh, I'm just going to go to Applebee's. Well, that's great, but try going someplace else that's local. You're supporting somebody's kid who's serving you or whatever. So that was my good deed for the day. Here I'm mixing some brown and white to get a light tan, because I'm going to do the interior that way. And then I'll hose that down with some Agrath Earthshade as well, just to kind of dirty it up a little bit, because obviously if it's a beat up rat rod, it shouldn't have super clean interior. Actually, technically, it shouldn't be an interior at all. You should have a floor pan, a 55-gallon drum that's been hored out to a seat, and a stick shift. And that's about it. Besides the steering wheel, obviously, and maybe one gauge. You just need to know temperature or gas. You don't need to know how fast you're going. But here I'm just kind of going the extra mile and doing stuff that you'll never ever see. If you notice, I painted the whole thing with the Chaos Black, which is a nice satin. And here I am doing the bottom that you'll absolutely never see. But my OCD kicks in sometimes. And then if you notice, I've been changing over. I've been using a lot of the Vallejo and Army Painter paints, and less of the Citadel paints. Not for any reason, just trying something different. And I like the bottles. I like the ability to just squeeze out a little bit and not have to work directly out of the pot like I would if I was working with Citadel. So I find I use less. So that's the only reason. There's no magic mystery there. I'm not dissing any. I like them all. This is just more convenient for me right now. But you can kind of see I'm painting the floor and the outside of the steering wheel. Again, little details, nothing crazy. Most of it you're never going to see, but makes me feel good. And sometimes when you do see stuff, it's just that little extra added bit that makes a difference. So I'm just taking my pin vise and I'm doing all the stacks. They already have an indentation stock. That's how they came molded. I'm just making it a little bit more pronounced. It just makes it easier. I think it adds a little bit to it, and tests my patience, and something to, like I said, you can see I'm not taking much off, just a little bit, just to, it gives it a little bit of depth. Every little bit that you do on a car or a casting adds to the overall appearance, and it detracts or brings your eye to different places. So that's technically why I'm doing it. Now I'm just going to use some gray. I already kind of used that same airbrush Rust Effects paint to wash the entire chassis with like the brownish rust color. Now I'm just dry brushing some gray just to add a little bit. It's one of those things that, again, not really necessary, but I just felt like doing it. And you're going to see the chassis too. Unfortunately, I didn't channel this over the chassis. So, and here I'm just doing the same thing, but I'm doing it with more of a chisel brush, and I'm just getting as much as I can of the grill There's different grill shells on a 32. You can buy them with the hole already in them or without it, and the hole is for the crank for the originals. So it all depends on your style. This one has no hole. I thought about putting a hole in it, but I just couldn't get myself to do it. And now, because I know my fans really enjoy me saying lead belcher, I'm using some lead belcher on the exhaust pipes. I'm still hunting for something that's better than lead belcher. I have yet to find it, but when I do, I promise you guys will be the first to know. And I thinned it down a little bit just to make it a little bit easier to work with. The one I had, this was like the last of it, and it was getting a little thick. So, but I did pick up some more at my local hobby store, because fortunately I've got like 4 hobby stores within 30 miles of me any direction, so it's kind of nice. I get a good selection of stuff. Here I'm taking some, I think it's necklace wire or something I get from Michael's or whatever right there. Use it for bracelets, that's what it was. I've had it forever. I'm just cutting 8 pieces, and I'm going to use them for spark plug wires. And what I did is I drilled holes in the side of the block, and that allowed me to just stick those in there. And then if you notice, there's actually a hole in the back of the block where the original, I don't even know what the hell, it wasn't for the snorkel, but it was in that general area. So I'm just going to stuff those in there so it'll look pretty good. This is kind of tedious. That's why I don't do it all the time. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but it looks good. It makes a huge difference. And then I'm going to take my Agrath Earth Shade again and dirty up the motor, because obviously, you know, it's a junkyard motor somebody pulled out. It's probably a, we'll call it, let's be sacrilegious, I'll call it a Chevy. It's a 283 since I put the spark plug wires in the back. I'll call it a 283 out of a 55 Chevy. And actually I had one of those, 283 with a, I think it was a 3-speed tranny. I had it in a 54 Chevy Del Rey I had. These Tamiya weathering powders, I'm scratching up the black a little bit to loosen it up. And I'm just going to put a little bit of soot, 2 utes where the exhaust would be, you know, off to the body a little bit, just to add a little bit of more of a shading, but just to give the effect that, you know, things running rich and it's, you know, leaving a little bit of exhaust. So here you can see what I did with the wheels. I did change them up, get some white walls on the front. They're I call them the Anson Sprints. I'm not really sure the exact name for them, but it's missing something. So I'm going to take and paint some white walls on the back tires, some wide whites, and then I'm just going to scuff the shit out of them because I did a horrible job. And, you know, weather them out a little bit, and then I'll use more of that brown wash on them to dirty them up as well. So that was kind of what I had in mind. So in the end, you know, I had fun building this. It's, you know, one of those end of the year projects where I just kind of did whatever. I actually finished this early, which never happens on a 4 Horseman build. I'm usually Johnny come lately on those, and I'm like the last one to upload. But this time I'll be the last one to upload, but I finished it early. So this narration today is Tuesday, so I'm actually 2 days ahead. So it's still better than normal. But again, I hope you guys had a great year. This is what I started with. You know, not a bad casting. I love the 32 Fords. I'm partial to them. And I like them. I think they get a lot of possibilities. And this is what I came up with. I know I've seen a few others. They're all going to be killer. Make sure you check them out. I've got a lot of pictures and some more videos, so please stick around and watch all of them. And I will catch you on the next one.